Now this right here is a crazy dangerous battery pack, whose big flaw I luckily noticed before anything terrible happened. Can you see the problem? If not, let me tell you that this spot welded connection here was not done properly. Meaning here were not two battery cells in parallel, there was only one. That could have led to an overcharge and even an explosion. But luckily for me, my smart charger noticed this problem and stopped what it was doing. Truth be told, this was my mistake, because I built this battery pack by myself in a previous AliExpress hidden gem episode. And sadly, I cannot repair this pack, because the battery cell it was supposed to be connected to got completely drained and damaged. That definitely sucks, and it made me realize that such a spot welded battery pack basically becomes useless as soon as one cell is dead, because there is no way of replacing one in there. So in this video, let's instead have a closer look at some spot weld free battery pack alternatives, create some of our own, have a look at a professional one and test them all viciously in order to ultimately find out whether spot welding is actually out of date. Let's get started! This video is sponsored by Bamboo Lab and their new H2D 3D printer, which is a perfect fit for this kind of projects. Not only got it a huge build plate, but also an enclosed active heating chamber, which makes it possible to print with something like carbon fiber nylon. This material has excellent mechanical properties and can endure quite a bit of heat without deforming, which is definitely important when it comes to battery packs. So check out the links below if that sounds interesting to you. And of course, you will see more of the printer during this video. Now first off, this problem only exists because of the cylindrical shape of the super popular 18650 lithium-ion cells. I mean, when we look at other battery chemistries like LFP, that nowadays more and more dominate not only home solar storage, but also electric vehicles, then this problem does in most cases not really exist, because they always come with such connector tabs that makes connecting easy. Sadly though, LFP needs more space and is heavier in comparison to lithium-ion when storing the same energy, which is why they are still widely used and doing pretty good. The cells obviously come with one positive and one negative terminal that deliver a nominal voltage of 3.6 volts, which is quite low and not usable for many applications. That is why you put more than one cell in series. And to do that, all we need is such a nickel strip and a spot welder, which you can both get for cheap. All we have to do is place the nickel strip between positive and negative, do some spot welds, and while we're at it, add some connector strips to the other side. And bada boom bada bang, we got a 2S battery pack that can now output 7.2 volts. Lovely! To test it, I set up my constant load and hooked it up to the battery pack, and like expected, it can output 10 amps of current without a problem. But what we really care about is the contact resistance, aka the resistance from the battery terminal to the connector nickel strip, which we want to be as low as possible, to create as little additional heat as possible. To measure that, I brought in my workbench multimeter, whose probes I placed onto the terminals while 10 amps of current was flowing, and it seems like we have a voltage drop of around 18.5 millivolts, aka 1.85 milliohm. This of course includes two contact resistances as well as the nickel strip resistance. So to differentiate a bit more, I also only measured the nickel strip, which was around 60 millivolts, aka 1.6 milliohm. So if we do the math correctly, then the contact resistance is truly tiny. And if we take the entire resistance into account and let for example 20 amp flow, which is close to the max of one cell, then the created heat should be around 0.74 watts. That is definitely a bit, and you can certainly feel and measure that. But that is still all safe, meaning the spot welded pack works great. But like mentioned before, getting rid of this connection in a clean and reusable way is pretty much impossible. So instead I searched the internet for an alternative, and definitely found some. What stood out to me were the creations by Electronics Workshop, in particular this design here. So I bought the design file, imported it into Bambu Lab Studio and sliced it for carbon fiber nylon filament. Next I loaded the filament into the new AMS2 Pro that can even dry your filament, which is great news for me because my garage is very cold and humid. But anyway, I started the print and had to look out for pretty much nothing. Yeah, carbon fiber nylon is not easy to print with, but the Bambu Lab H2D did it without breaking a sweat, and the end result also looked pretty great. Now the idea here is simple, you just insert your nickel strips for all your connections, put in the cells, and then use these 3D printed screws to secure everything in place. And I gotta say, these screws work fantastic, because once I was done, I could not move these cells one bit. And as you would expect, we got our desired output voltage, meaning it was once again time for the resistance test. This time though, it was a bit harder to reach the terminals of the cells. But eventually I got a measurement of 23.5 millivolts, which means that the contact resistance basically tripled. Don't worry though, because at a max of 20 amps of current, we still only create 0.94 watts. Which we can once again measure, but it is still all safe to use. The only problem I see here is that the resistance will get bigger when these screws are not tightened properly, meaning such small oversights can lead to big problems. And needless to say, over time this screw connection will loosen up a bit, either due to hot and cold cycles or vibrations. That is why I usually avoid such screw connections, as I already explained and showed off in a previous video. Instead I love to use such Wago connectors, because they come with such a lever spring system that continuously applies pressure. So next I went on a hunt for a spring-loaded battery pack system, and I think I found one on AliExpress for a reasonable price. So after putting two enclosures together, I used the given video on the product page as a reference to assemble these screw, spring and nut combos. And it seems to work pretty well, so time to insert the cells, put them in series using the given metal bars and ultimately check the output voltage. That means it was time for the amps and resistance test, and it seems like we're dealing with a total of 24.5 millivolts, aka 2.45 milliohm, which seems pretty close to the previous solution. But this time we're using different metal connectors that come with a slightly smaller resistance, meaning the contact resistance is this time the biggest of them all. That is no wonder considering that I can still turn the cells, but once again, these resistances are nothing to worry about, even when drawing 20 amps. So in conclusion, these DIY Weldless battery packs are not half bad, and definitely usable for anything under 20 amps, which should cover tons of applications. And yes, you can swap battery cells in seconds, which is fantastic when it comes to repairing packs. And honestly speaking, maybe these press fit connections are the future of battery packs, which brings me to this big boy here. This is a battery pack from Second Ride, which is a company that specializes in turning such old mopeds here into electric mopeds with a conversion kit. And this battery pack is part of this kit, or you can get it standalone under their new brand Marquee Batteries. But anyway, the special thing about this battery pack can be seen when taking it apart, because yes, they're also using a press fit spring-like connection here with this big PCB. That means you can easily swap out and replace each one of these cells, which is great news for easy repairs and sustainability. Their measured resistance is 2.5 milliohm, which also seems plausible considering my own measurements. But I honestly would not advise you to open such a pack yourself, because battery cells can be dangerous if not treated correctly. With that being said, I hope you got some new ideas for your next battery pack and enjoyed my experiments. If so, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Stay creative and I will see you next time!